Star Wars today is not this Star Wars. And you forget how good this Star Wars was.
Don't everybody thank me at once.
Real feeling, this immediate feeling of childhood when I watched Star Wars. I had the VHSs as a kid of the special editions. And I actually had an original VHS of just Star Wars, which I wish I had. Wish I still had it. It was silver, had the cool old school poster on the front. That was a classic VHS. One thing I really enjoyed on this rewatch of Star Wars is the fact that things are gradually introduced. Nowadays, when you think of Star Wars, and nowadays when you think of stuff, the world building is so thrown in your face, and they're just rushing to create the world. Whereas in this original Star Wars, it was gradual. You learned with Luke Skywalker. There was a sense of innocence, there was a sense of naivety in this character of Luke Skywalker, but also in us, in the audience. We had no idea what we were about to see. We had no idea that this film was about to revolutionise and change the industry forever. And we had that chance to go on a wide-eyed adventure with Luke Skywalker as he meets Obi-Wan Kenobi, as he's gradually exposed to the ways of the Force, as the Force is this mysterious thing, and we learn little bits about it here and there, but not too much, and it still has its sense of mystery. And I love how this movie, it's actually one of the most expert ways I've seen of introducing ideas. It just never feels forced, It really felt like back here, George Lucas was, because it was the first one, he just went about trying to make a great movie. Whereas now when they make stuff, it's all about, okay, we got 7 sequels to go, where are we going to go with this? Whereas here it just felt more earnest and more from the heart. Obviously the characters in A New Hope are some of the strongest in movie history. When you first meet, I know this is going to sound silly, but I do regard them as 2 of the greatest Star Wars characters. When you first meet C-3PO and R2-D2 at the start of this film, I don't know how this happens, because this was 1977, but you were suddenly... The sympathy you have for these 2 droids is incredible. They become your friends by the end of the movie, and that's incredibly hard to do considering these characters have... C-3PO has a face, but he's not really human, but your heart goes out to him. Same with R2-D2, but R2-D2 literally has no features, but he's incredibly cute. And I don't know how George Lucas did that. And the fantastic design of the droids. Everything was designed so well in this. The heart and the passion that went into this. I'm surprised this movie even got made, because George Lucas didn't have a lot of money at the time. He didn't have much at all, but for some reason these expert designs stood out, and he was able to make things that stuck in your head. R2-D2, you'll never forget it. And somehow he looks like a cute animal or something like that, and you just start to love him. We'd never seen this before. We never started a film following some robots and our heart goes out, we care. And I don't know, nowadays if you put 2 robots on the screen, you probably wouldn't care. But back here in the 70s, George Lucas was able to do it. You were instantly intrigued, because you're not following the people on this invaded ship. You're following the droids, which is immediately different. Obviously, we get Mark Hamill's Luke Skywalker, such a plucky and innocent performance. It's one of the best likeable performances in movie history, I think. I think Mark Hamill, he just must have been such a nice guy, and I'm sure he still is, because it just radiates from him. This kindness, this sweetness, this joy. And I kind of think, obviously later on in the franchise we had Hayden Christensen as young Anakin. If he had come close to gaining this level of likability of Luke, it would have been a different story. The fall that he has in the prequels would have been a different story. You would have been so much more hit by that. Mark Hamill just did it. He was so well cast as Luke Skywalker. You immediately feel like you're friends with him. There's so much friendship at the heart of Star Wars, which I feel like they forgot about now, that it is about friendship. And it's about you feeling like you're friends with the characters as well. Of course, we meet Obi-Wan, played by Alec Guinness, the legendary Alec Guinness. I love his performance of Obi-Wan. I love how he's subdued. You can see there's stuff going on behind the eyes when he talks about the Empire. but he's also very sweet and charming and a welcoming old man. And you see that he has loads to say to Luke, but he's keeping it inside, and he sees hope in Luke. I think Alec Guinness nails all those facial expressions of lots of unsaid things, and we know in the sequels there was lots of bloody unsaid things. Obi-Wan should have said more. That scene where he's telling Luke about the Force and he gives him his father's lightsaber is so simple. Like, you don't have to overcomplicate it here. He just tells him about the Force in such a natural way, and it makes us feel like this isn't conjecture, like this isn't contrived, none of it's forced. Because it could be a very forced world, you know, and lots of franchises and Star Wars today you could say is quite forced. Here it was just enough to have those little moments where we were let behind the curtain of how the Force operates and how this world operates. And George Lucas picked his moments to give you the history of the experiences of the characters such as Obi-Wan to let you in. But he didn't give you too much, and I enjoyed that because it felt so, it sunk in a lot better.
For over 1,000 generations, the Jedi Knights were the guardians of peace and justice in the Old Republic. Before the Dark Times, before the Empire.
Of course, when you see Darth Vader invading that ship at the start, he feels like terror on the screen. I was absolutely terrified of Darth Vader as a kid, and you know what? That outfit still... You know, I went to a Comic-Con and I saw someone walking around in a Darth Vader outfit. It's still scary, guys. It's still scary.
Where are those transmissions you intercepted? What have you done with those plans?
We intercepted no transmissions. This is a consular ship. We're on a diplomatic mission.
If this is a consular ship, where is the ambassador?
It's one of the scariest outfits ever. And again, whoever was working with George Lucas, like, I feel like George Lucas, he had an easy ride in a way. Like, he had a very hard ride in a way, but he also had a very easy ride because the people around him were amazing. The people around him designing these costumes, designing these outfits, designing the world were incredible. They've done some of the best work ever in cinema to select the right costumes. It seems to be a skill that's missing today because everything's CGI. Maybe if we went back to actually having costumes, it would stick in your head a lot more. Because they're really, really great in the original Star Wars. And of course, you know, that voice of James Earl Jones of Darth Vader is so iconic. And what more can you say about it? It just captivates you whenever you hear it. Harrison Ford is Han Solo, pure charisma. You forget how much screen presence Harrison Ford had. It's stunning. It's incredible. You know, there's just that scoundrel style. Again, even his costume, you know, that waistcoat and that blaster at his side and everything about how he looks, even that stands out in your mind. Do you remember how Han Solo looks? How many characters that come out in films now, do you remember how they look, you know, and it makes an imprint on you? Harrison Ford, constant lines. He's so funny in this. So many funny moments with Han Solo, showing his brilliance as a comedic actor.
Everything's under control. Situation normal.
What happened?
Had a slight weapons malfunction, but everything's perfectly all right now. We're fine. We're all fine here now. Thank you. How are you?
Carrie Fisher as Princess Leia revolutionised things for women. Late 70s, she's shooting, she's cursing out the guys around her, she's got the most iconic hairdo in the history of cinema. What I love is there's a real rhythm to the dialogue between Han, Luke and Leia. They are great as a threesome on screen because there's just different ways that each character can bounce off the other. Luke is obviously the inexperienced youngster who Han can kind of springboard back and forth with and insult him for being young. But then Luke can get one over on Han by knowing better than him in a certain situation. Han can get annoyed at that. Han has never really seen a strong woman like Leia, so he's impressed with her, but he's also arguing. Leia doesn't know what's going on at all, so she's got a chip on her shoulder. So, it's like a mixture of affection, but also real tension between these three as they get to know each other in a real tense situation of trying to escape the Death Star. It's great. It's so well done. Small scenes mean so much in this, which I forgot about. For example, that scene where they're getting pulled in by the Death Star and you're in the Millennium Falcon with them and you feel this sense of dread this sense of tension, and you feel like you're on that ship. And slowly but surely they realise they're being pulled to the Death Star, and they're speculating, and then it sets in where they are. That's just a small moment, but you would never get anything like that today, because you're really invested in that small moment, but it's just really a small thing. But the way that Obi-Wan is haunted in that moment, and the way he gets through to Han, Luke is panicking, it just all works. And you just feel that aura of the Death Star as well. What a horrifying entity that is in itself.
Look at him, he's heading for that small moon.
I think I can get him before he gets there. He's almost in range.
That's no moon. It's a space station.
It's too big to be a space station.
There's a very bad feeling about this.
Turn the ship around.
Yeah, I think you're right. We'll reverse. Chewie, lock in the auxiliary power.
Also the scene where Leia sees her planet get blown up really hit me emotionally. And again, you know, I really wish we could go back to more meaningful storytelling, you know. I feel like small things should be more in movies these days, and this is a sole example of how well it can work. I think the ending, the culmination, the attack on the Death Star, again, the way they did it. You know, there's no computers here. You know, I know that in the special edition they added CGI. I actually think the CGI additions in the special edition are actually quite good. They're where I would have added stuff, but then obviously George Lucas lost his shit and just added it for every grain of sand and anything else he ever bloody made. But here it kind of made sense. It filled in the gaps a bit. But when you think that they actually done this whole attack on the Death Star with stuff on, models on strings, the models look great. And you see them coming into shot and getting closer, and it feels like a real space battle. They were models on strings. There was such an innocence to the way things were done back here, and a determination, because you could have just given up on making something like this, and like, no one's ever going to believe this. The fact that they did, and I wish, because you can't actually get hold of these anymore, I don't think. You can't really get hold of the original trilogy unaltered without the CGI ships. I wish I could see that again. I remember I had it on VHS and it didn't look bad. It still blew me away. And I'd want to watch that again to see how models on strings really meant something and was believable and drew you in. They were breaking down barriers in filmmaking here. No one had the guts to try this. To try a big scale space battle like this with just models. You know, they've done it in certain degrees in certain things, but not with this level of ambition, you know. The ambition on display, George Lucas was perhaps too ambitious, you know, and he got in over his head later on in the franchise, but you can't fault him here. That ending sequence, you're really invested in Luke, you really root for Luke, and that moment where he blows up the Death Star and Han comes back, it's one of the most joyous moments in all of cinema for me. Thanks for watching. If you're a movie geek just like me, press subscribe. I talk about cult films, classic films, horror films on this channel, crime films. I talk about new films as well sometimes. And click on another video on the screen now.